What is up, guys? It is Keggernaut, but just please call me Kegg, and today I'm going to be bringing you the Guardian Druid artifact weapon video. I'm really excited because I think that Guardian Druids have some pretty interesting traits and some pretty interesting golden dragons to offer. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and fly over to the artifact weapon tree. Alright, so here is the Guardian Druid artifact weapon tree in all of its glory. It's fully maxed out, fully specced out, and what you guys might not have noticed is that I added the relics, which is what I'm going to suggest that you use in this video because it's something that I forgot in the Vengeance Demon Hunter video, and I'm sorry about that, but it's important information, so I thought you guys should know. So before we do anything, let's reset and grab Rage of the Sleeper, which is your artifact ability, and it's what you get once you receive your artifact weapon in the first place. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown, and for 10 seconds, you prevent 25% damage that you take and reflect that back to your attackers. After that, we're going to take Iron Claws, which will increase our armor by 5% and then access the rest of the tree for us. Now, I did this in the Vengeance Demon Hunter video, and it comes the same here, and we have to figure out what our 4 dragons are, because every spec gets them, so we need to figure out what ours are, and which ones are more important, and which one we want to go after first. So the first one up here in the top left corner is called Embrace the Nightmare. While Rage of the Sleeper is active, you deal 25% increased damage, gain 25% increased leech, and are immune to all effects that cause loss of control of your character. After that, the one on the bottom is called Gory Fur. Mangle has a 15% chance to reduce the rage cost of your next Iron Fur or Mark of Ursoc by 50%. The next one is Adaptive Fur. Taking elemental damage has a chance to grant you 10% damage reduction for 15 seconds against the elements that caused the damage. And the last one up in the top right corner is called Ursoc's Bond. Your bond with Ursoc's mighty avatar grows stronger by the day, making you more resilient to enemy attacks. This will increase your total health pool by 5% and will further increase all the way up to 20%, 15% after you put all 20 ranks into this artifact trait. So the first one that I suggest that we go for is Adaptive Fur, and I'll explain why later. So let's go and take Wild Flesh, which will increase our healing done of Frenzied Regen, Perpetual Spring, which will reduce the cooldown of Bark Skin by 9%, and then Reinforced Fur, which will increase the armor of Iron Fur by an additional 12%, and then finally grabbing Adaptive Fur. Now the reason why I take this artifact trait over Gory Fur and over Embrace the Nightmare is because a lot of the mobs in Legion, especially during dungeons and also some outdoor content while leveling, they do sort of the same type of damage. So with this artifact trait, taking fire damage, for instance, gives you a chance to get a 10% damage reduction to further fire damage for 15 seconds. And since you're going to be grabbing packs of mobs, since you're a tank, whether you're leveling or tanking in a dungeon, you have more and more instances of this trait to become active rather than Gory Fur and Embrace the Nightmare. So as a pure tank and survivability situation, this one is better to choose. After Adaptive Fur, we're going to be taking Bear Hug because that'll increase the chance for Gore to trigger by 5%. And what Gore does is every time you do a damaging ability, you have a chance to reset the cooldown of Mangle, and Mangle then has an increased damage and increased rage regen. So that's always good to grab because it'll be baseline 20% with this artifact trait. After that, I think that we should go to Gory Fur. So let's take Vicious Bites, let's take Sharpened Instincts, and then Ursoc's Endurance. Note, this one increases the duration of Barkskin, Iron Fur, and Mark of Ursoc by 1.5 seconds. So this 1.5 seconds is the same time that it takes for an entire global cooldown to go. So that means that this increased duration that your Barkskin, Iron Fur, and Mark of Ursoc is up, that gives you another chance to possibly do another Mangle, or to do Thrash, or to do Moonfire if you have a Galactic Guardian proc. So you can get more rage regen just by having this up, which is very good. After that, let's take Gory Fur, which gives us a 15% chance every time we use Mangle to reduce the rage cost of our next Iron Fur and Mark of Ursoc by 50%. Now, this may sound good, and it is good by the way, but compared to Adaptive Fur in a survivability context, Adaptive Fur gives you more chances and more instances to get a 10% damage reduction of fire, frost, nature damage, whatever, than Gory Fur has of the uptime that you have a Mark of Ursoc and Iron Fur. So I went for this one over this because by the time you get this, you'll probably be raiding, and during the raids you'll have this already, and while you're tanking dungeons, like what I said before, you're going to be tanking a lot in the dungeons, Adaptive Fur is something to go towards. Now after that, obviously we have to go to Embrace the Nightmare, so let's go over to Bloody Paws, which will increase our Thrash's utility. Thrash then gets a movement speed reduction of the targets that it hits by 50% for 6 seconds. After that, let's take Jagged Claws and then grab Embrace the Nightmare. Now, Embrace the Nightmare, what it does is it further increases the potency of your Rage of the Sleeper artifact ability by granting you 25% increased damage and 25% increased leech, and gives you immunity to all effects that cause loss of control of your character. That means that this is very good, but you only get to use this for 10 seconds that this buff is active, and this buff is active at max every 1.5 minutes. And since this is a big cooldown, a very big survivability cooldown, you're not going to want to pop this every single time that it's up. So you're going to want to save this for certain instances of the fight that you know that you're going to be taking more damage, and you don't want to use Bark Skin or stacked Iron Furs or Survival Instincts for. So that's why I saved this one for last. After that, let's just take Bestial Fortitude, which will increase our stamina by 3%, making us more effective because we'll have a bigger health pool anyway. After that, let's skip over Mauler and then just go to Roar of the Crowd, which will increase our movement speed every time we use Stampeding Roar, depending on how many allies that we hit. And then after that, we'll go for Mauler. And the reason why I left Mauler last is because Maul does so little damage anyway that it doesn't matter about the critical strike chance. It's almost always, in every situation, a better idea to spend that 20 rage on another Mark of Ursoc or another Iron Fur, because those stack on top of each other. So it's much better to save your rage for those and decrease the amount of damage you take than to increase the amount of damage that you do. Anyway, after all of this is spent, we have access to our Paragon trait, Ursoc's Bond, which I told you about before, which will increase our health pool by a total of a whopping 15%. Now, you have access to your relics before you even finish the artifact weapon. You have access to first 2, and then after you do some quest lines, you have access to a 3rd one in your class hall. So the ones that I suggest are anything to do with these 3 artifact traits. And then also, you could also switch them out just for more healing on Frenzied Regen or more Thrash damage. But these are the ones that I recommend, because with another point into Reinforced Fur, that'll give your Iron Fur an increased armor of an additional 4%, which is amazing, by the way. That's not just an extra 2% or extra 1%. No, that's a whole 4%. That's amazing. So already your Iron Fur gives you 100% increased armor. With this, you'll have an extra 16%, making it 116% increased armor. After that, we'll grab one that increases the rank of Ursoc's Endurance, which will give us an extra 0.5 seconds of the uptime of Bark Skin, Iron Fur, and Mark of Ursoc. The last one is anything to do with Bestial Fortitude, which will increase our stamina by an additional 1%. Now 1%, that's very minor and not really significant. I chose it just because it increases your tanking anyway, but if you feel that you might need more healing and don't really care about that 1% increased stamina, grab something that has to do with Wild Flesh, which will increase your healing of your Frenzied Regen by an additional 5%, making it 20%, or if you want more damage, then just throw one into Jagged Claws, which will increase the damage of Thrash by another 10%, making it 40% baseline. And that's really it. That's the end of the artifact trait. It's fully upgraded. This is what I suggest, and this is my preferred path of progression. When I level up my bear, this is what I'm going to do, and I think this is the most effective way to spend your artifact power, because artifact power is very, 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 very important in Legion. So you don't want to spend your artifact power in the wrong spots, because it's very expensive to respec if you don't like the way that you went. So it's important not to spend them in the wrong places. And with that, that's the end of the video. Thank you guys all for watching. If you really enjoyed, leave a like down below, leave a comment down below, and also make sure to subscribe to me, because I have a lot more content coming soon, especially tomorrow. There's going to be the Brewmaster weapon video, and if you haven't seen my Vengeance Demon Hunter weapon video, then please, there's going to be a link on screen, and there's also going to be a link in the description down below. So make sure that you guys click those if you haven't already, and keep an eye out for the Brewmaster one tomorrow. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.